The GSD Party Conference 2013 got underway at Inces Hall on Thursday the 25th of April, introduced by member of the GSD Executive and Master of Ceremonies, Freddy Vasquez.
As most of you will know, this meeting was supposed to have taken place a week ago at the John Mackintosh Hall. It had to be postponed because of the sad and untimely death of Charles Broussonne. I'm sure we'll agree that that was the right thing to do, as a mark of respect to a very decent and much respected member of the Gibraltar Parliament. It simply seemed to us entirely inappropriate to hold a political meeting almost immediately after his funeral.
After explaining the difficulties arising from the change of date and venue, Mr. Vasquez began his main address.
Now, all this talk of streaming and technological advances brings to mind one of the themes of this evening's proceedings, and that is of modernization, change, and building for the future. In the book Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Moore, the hero Charles Ryder returns from a long voyage of several years to South America and meets again with his estranged wife in London. And after a rather painful evening together, she turns to him and laments, "Charles, you've changed." To which he replies dryly, "Yes, my dear, that's because I'm alive." Now, change is the essence of life, and nothing that is alive is unchanging. And if change can be seen as a measure of life, then, as I hope you will learn in the course of this evening, this political party is most certainly alive and kicking. I have been a member of the executive of the GSD since 1990. That's almost a generation ago. It seems unbelievable. And I recall that sometime in March or April of 1990, a group of individuals who were concerned at the direction that local politics had taken in Gibraltar following the 1988 GSLP election victory, and in light of what was clearly and evidently the terminal demise of the AACR, a group of people were concerned about the way Gibraltar politics was heading, and Peter Montegrifo convened a meeting in his office in, as I say, March or April of 1990. And we met to discuss the creation of a new political party in Gibraltar. And that meeting gave birth to this party. Who of us at that meeting could possibly have imagined that from those small beginnings, a movement would start that after only 6 or 7 years would see this party elected into office to assume responsibility for steering Gibraltar's destiny for an uninterrupted period of 16 years. 16 years, which looking back we can say were 16 years of exemplary governance, which delivered unimaginable economic growth. The economy grew by 300% during our term in office, a period of unrivaled personal prosperity, political stability, both internally and externally. Who can forget, for example, this constant atmosphere of hysteria and crisis, which was characteristic of those first 8 years of GSLP administration? And on the international front as well, relations with Britain in the form of the new constitution, and with Spain in the form of the tripartite process, have never been bettered. This is a period which saw the emergence of a flourishing and self-confident Gibraltarian society. Who can possibly doubt that Gibraltar, when it emerged from those 16 years in 2011, was a far better place than it had been when we assumed responsibility in 1996. But the fact, however, is that whilst we take great pride in our achievements, this party cannot allow itself to rest on its laurels. We must keep an eye to the future and show the people of Gibraltar that we are ready to resume the responsibility of government again, and that is one of the reasons that we're here today. This party of necessity is evolving to meet the challenges that lie ahead. We have new faces, new methods, and new vigor, and I'm sure that you will appreciate all this at the end of this evening's meeting. At its heart, however, the party is still driven by the same ideas and values that drew that group of people together back in 1990. And really, they are a very simple set of ideas. I would summarize them in three basic statements. This party believes in fundamental good governance. Governance based on fair, accountable, and responsible government. This party does not believe in jobs for the boys, or private companies operating out of Number 6 Convent Place, or secret government accounts. Nor, for that matter, does this party believe in governance by tweet or by Facebook. We've seen the sort of dead end that sort of irresponsible governance can lead Gibraltar to. So the first point, fundamental good governance. The second, the protection of the weakest members of our society. How we look after our vulnerable, our elderly, and our incapacitated defines us as a society. It's a responsibility that any responsible government must take on board. But at the same time, the third point, the encouragement of personal initiative. This party has at its core the realization that society is comprised of a collection of individuals, and that society can only prosper if those individuals are allowed a free rein to achieve their potential without the overwhelming interference from the state. So, as examples of this core belief, the GSD introduced free secondary education for every student in Gibraltar and consistently lowered the tax burden on Gibraltarians throughout our 16 years of government. That's the idea of giving responsibility back to the individual. These were the sorts of ideas that united that group of people that became the GSD back in 1990. And these are the ideas that still unite us and drive this party forward. We have new faces, new methods, but we still espouse the same ideals. So, ladies and gentlemen, may I please call onto the stage the individual who delivered the dream of good governance for 16 consecutive years, the longest serving and best Chief Minister Gibraltar has ever had, Mr. Peter Caruana. May I now call onto the stage the person who has taken over the baton and assumed responsibility for delivering the same dream of good governance into the future, Mr. Daniel Peters. Before we continue with the meeting, we would like to present a short film which provides a brief glimpse of what we, in our opinion, consider this party has achieved and how it has evolved over the last year.
The front line in the struggle to eradicate colonialism in this decade is not to be found in those non-self-governing territories where the right to self-determination is not disputed or where the pace of the decolonization process remains a matter for the people of the territory. That front line is to be found in territories like Gibraltar.
Spain's position, Mr. Chairman, is not even logical and coherent. Spain does not oppose the decolonization of Gibraltar. She wants its decolonization too, just as we do. She simply believes that it should be done by applying the principle of territorial integrity and not the principle of self-determination.
I think we've got 4 days of tough negotiation in front of us because, you know, it's a serious issue.
It's an honor and a privilege for me to be asked to address you here tonight.
We have improved, and I am proud of this on behalf of us all, again, because it shows the unselfish values that lie at the core of this party.
It's this party that has slashed taxes by up to 55% through 11 years of systematic and unrelenting tax cuts.
Gibraltar needs to carry on going forward. We do not need to go backwards, and we do not need to throw away all the gains of our recent past. I now inaugurate this wonderful project.
Welcome. When I first was appointed as Minister for Justice in 2007, I was very conscious of the fact that for the very first time the 2006 Constitution had vested upon the government important responsibilities.
£6.5 million, £6.5 billion on new rules, on lists, on reforms.
Muchísimas gracias. Es un gran honor y un gran placer para mí poder esta noche dirigirme a todos ustedes. What Gibraltar needs now is experienced, proven, successful leadership, the type of leadership that has produced results over the last 4 years, the type of leadership
that knows how to walk the walk and not simply talk the talk.
Well, I think I bring energy, I think I bring enthusiasm to the position of deputy leader.
You can talk about style all you like, but at the end of the day, what binds people together, what binds parties together, is values.
It's been a long thought out and long thought through decision which has balanced in my mind and torn me in both directions for quite a lot of months since the last election. On the one hand, you know, I enjoyed my political job, I enjoyed being Chief Minister.
The repositioning of Gibraltar's reputation, the improvements on Gibraltar at all levels, and the improvement in the standard of living of Gibraltarians across the board. Remarkable achievements, a remarkable translation of Peter's vision into reality, and in my view, it guarantees Peter's status not only as one of the great Gibraltarians of our time, but as the greatest Gibraltarian of our time.
This party has grown, not just to be the government of Gibraltar for 4 successive terms, but almost more important than that. It has grown to be the party that actually speaks for and represents the values, standards and aspirations of the vast majority of the people of this community.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to invite to the lectern now the individual who singularly represents the embodiment of everything this party stands for and has done so for the last 20 years, Mr. Peter Gatuana.
Party leader, fellow members of the great GSD political family. This party has become, in my view, an essential part of modern Gibraltar. And it's become an essential part of modern Gibraltar not because we seek the ambitions of power, but because we have used the levers of power to reflect the ambitions, the aspirations, and the vision of the people of Gibraltar. We are a political party that uses political office to advance a vision for Gibraltar that chides and coincides rather with the views of the vast majority, as I said in that clip that you have seen, people of Gibraltar. Even people of Gibraltar that do not and may never have voted for us will nevertheless acknowledge the degree to which they see in this party a safe pair of hands for the governance of Gibraltar. A safe pair of hands because at the core, whether it's domestic policy, whether it's foreign policy, there is an element of fairness, of common sense, of stability, of decency, of vision, of inclusiveness, of wanting to do things right, of wanting to stand up for what is Gibraltar's rights and interests, firmly but intelligently. And Freddie has given you today a very good summary of what the GSD stands for. We have always stood first and foremost for the solid, intelligent defense of the external challenges that Gibraltar has faced, because we believe that there is no more necessary legacy for us to leave to our children and grandchildren than the dignity of knowing that the place where they have grown up and the place where they will raise their own children in turn is their homeland and nobody else's. But applying our standards and our values, we do it with intelligence. Because we need not only to make good our international rights and aspirations, we need also at the same time to create a Gibraltar where an economy can prosper, where there is international confidence, and therefore will sustain an ever-increasing standard of living that will enable families to be raised and families to live together in the sort of Western European prosperity of the 21st century that we now take for granted in Gibraltar, but which is in large measure down to 16 years of successful GSD foreign and domestic economic policy. And then, rooted as our values are in social democracy, then we go about fairly distributing the wealth around the community so that everybody benefits from it, that our economic policies have created. Tax cuts have already been mentioned. Improvement in public services, improvement in public amenities, investment in new public amenities for the future of Gibraltar. No government in 16 years of the governance of Gibraltar has transformed and invested and changed for the good Gibraltar more than this party has done since 1996. And the core root reason for that is that we apply our vision, our standards, and our values to everything that we do. Which doesn't mean we get everything right. It didn't mean that we got everything right in the 16 years that we were in government. But on the whole, we got much, much, much of it right in the way that human endeavor, as I said in my last farewell, do, that human endeavor necessarily involves an element of error. But the people of Gibraltar have grown to trust this party, not just because it has the values with which people can relate, which people want to grasp as the standards and the vision and the values that they want to see shape the future and the destiny of their own children and grandchildren, not just because we have applied those standards to all our policies, but also because at the same time there has always been a sense of fairness to our supporters and to our political opponents alike. And any party, in my view, that departs from that sense of even-handed fairness will not take long in alienating the majority of the people of Gibraltar, because we are an intrinsically fair-minded people. It has been my honor to lead a wonderful group of people for 16 years. And although people are very generous in recognizing and no doubt exaggerating, I mean, you now know that your new leader is prone to overstatement. The reason why this party will survive is not just because of all that I've just said about values and standards and vision and fairness and success in the past. It is also because the party represents you, and you are going nowhere. It is also because the party represents a collective, collegiate effort. Despite the exaggerations about my contributions over the 16 years, it has been a team effort, always, by 8 hard-working ministers who have made it all possible. And one of the reasons why this party will survive a change of leadership when others have not is precisely because this party is, always has been, and will always be much, much, much more than the leader of it at any given time, including one that may have had the good fortune to have led it to 4 successive general elections. And so this party will go forward with the same values. Freddie is right to emphasize the need for change. I would have used a slightly different word. I would have said the need for rejuvenation, the need for regeneration, the need to re-engage with sectors of the community from whom we might have become disengaged. I believe that this party should never, ever change its sense of vision, its vision for what is good for Gibraltar, its sense of values, its sense of standards, its sense of fairness, and the innate understanding of what the people of Gibraltar want to be done by the government for their future, for their present, and for the international good reputation of Gibraltar. We should never, ever change those policies, and I hope that you will support the new leader of the party and the new leadership of the party more widely below the new leader of the party in that endeavor. We have always been a party that is responsible in the sense of putting Gibraltar first. Perhaps if we had been a little bit more political, a little bit more willing to put Gibraltar second and politic for our own political party advantage first, as some others appeared to have been willing to do when they were in opposition, perhaps if we had been like that, who knows, we might have got the 5th term. But in this party, we always put Gibraltar's interests before the interests of the party. And there is soon to be an example where we are going to be called upon to show the same responsible putting Gibraltar first. I think if I can go from others' overstatement to understatement, I think it is true to say that the government finds itself in a tight spot, and with it Gibraltar, in relation to the mishandling of the fishing agreement. It is hugely in Gibraltar's interests that that matter be resolved as soon as possible. And I hope that the party, when the government comes out with a solution that has been required by mishandling of the issue of its own making, but nevertheless, in the interests of Gibraltar, and provided it does not represent concessions on sovereignty and jurisdiction, which we worked so hard in the 1999 agreement to make sure was not just protected but enhanced, so long as it meets that test, this party has got to stand ready to support and help the government to get Gibraltar out of the hole that they have placed Gibraltar in. You will thus be a vital, vital part of the regeneration, the moving forward of the party. I have had 16 wonderful years at the leadership of this community, thanks in no small measure to the support of many of the people filling this room, to the hard work of many of the people filling this room. You are the party, not the MPs in Parliament, not the executive. You, the members and the activists, are the party. Without you, it would not exist. Without you, we would not have won 4 elections in a row. Without you, this party cannot regenerate, cannot rejuvenate, cannot do the things that Freddie so rightly said we should do, and cannot put itself in the position where I think the people want us to put ourselves, and that is able to be re-elected into the governance of this community at the earliest possible opportunity. I remember that when we were in government, the present government, then the opposition, used to criticize us for issuing too many press releases. I think they had issued more press releases by the end of March this year than we had issued in the whole previous year. But multiplicity of spin and of press releases
cannot disguise the fact that this is not a popular government. It was not a popular government on the 11th of December 2011. Let us not forget that they won the election with less than 50% of popular support. More than half the voters in this community wanted somebody other than them to be the government of Gibraltar. And it seems to me that they're working quite effectively to affect those numbers against them as quickly as they can. I think that they are creating an environment, a political environment in Gibraltar, in which we could easily see a return to government by the GSD at the very next opportunity in 2015. It's possible. We should work for it. We should rejuvenate to achieve it. And with your help and the help of many others, we will. You all know that that will be without my frontline participation. After these 16 magnificent years, I really do think it was the right decision for me to stand down to ensure that the GSD has a future beyond me. It's very easy, you stay on until it's too late, until the party is dragged down with you as eventually everybody's star fades. And I'm not talking about losing an election. I'm talking about lingering and lingering and lingering until people's view of the leader is transferred to their view about the party. At that point, there is an AACR type factor and the party can never recover and dies. This party is too important to the people of Gibraltar. This party is too important to a successful future for this community, for our children and for our grandchildren, to risk linking its fortunes to my personal popularity fortunes. And I have judged, with advice from a lot of people, all well-meaning, that the longer-term interests, whatever might have been the better prospects in the short term, in the medium to long-term interests of this party, it was the right decision to make way for an orderly transition to a new leadership that could do some of that rejuvenation that perhaps would have been much harder for me to do. And it has been a relatively easy thing for me to do, and a relatively easy decision for me to take, because it is not as if this party is short of good leadership candidates. We had not one, but two. And we had to choose between two friends, to disappoint one and to elevate the other. That requires difficult decisions. But the party chose its new leader, and I have no doubt whatsoever and no hesitation whatsoever in recommending him to the party, to its membership, to the people of Gibraltar as somebody with the integrity, with the decency, with the standards, with the vision, with the courage, with the convictions, with the determination to make a fantastic leader for the GSD and an equally fantastic chief minister for Gibraltar when the time comes. I have heard much nonsense spoken about Danny. I can tell you, without a moment's hesitation, that from head to toe, whatever might have been his history politically, well, almost everywhere in the GSD you see people with a different political history at some stage of their political careers. But I can tell you, having worked with him closely in government for 4 years, having engaged with him in dialogue when we were leaders of different political parties, and subsequently when we have been in opposition, that Danny Feetham represents and will make a magnificent advocate
for all the visions, all the standards, all the values of the GSD that I have ever attached any value to myself. And the barely disguised contempt, anger, intemperateness with which his political opponents treat him, the scorn, the unpleasantness, is the biggest testimony to the fact that they agree and that they know that he represents a very, very significant challenge to them. This party can win the very next elections if we all pull behind the new leader, support him as you have supported me, work together for our common vision. None of us have ever been in this for the sake of wielding power. Most of you in this room do not wield power, never did wield power when we were in government, yet you worked unselfishly, tirelessly, behind the scenes, with no recognition, many of you. Why? Because you, representing as you do the wider community of which you form a diverse but highly representative part, know that the natural party of government, the government that every Gibraltarian, even those that do not support us, can trust to deliver a secure, a prosperous, a safe Gibraltar with values and standards and peace of mind and not having to look over your shoulder and not worried about the international newspapers going to say tomorrow about our homeland, is this party. The GSD and no other party currently in existence have demonstrated that they are able to do so. That is why you have worked tirelessly for this party, and that is why I urge you to rally behind the new leader and deliver to him the same support so that he can deliver to you the same peace of mind, security, prosperity, the same GSD peace of mind at night and day as we did for 16 years, where, as has already been said, and I am not going to repeat, Gibraltar enjoyed an unprecedented 16 years, not just of socio-economic prosperity, but of international respect, not just of defending ourselves politically, of political progress. The Constitution, the Spanish foreign minister, the top of the rock, looking at the apes like a tourist. Well, that's how it should be. The achievement wasn't in any sense of luring him to the trap. There was no trap and there was no luring. The success was in two democratic European politicians, the Chief Minister of Gibraltar and the Foreign Minister of Spain, understanding that whatever might be our differences, perhaps insoluble differences, in the 21st century in Western Europe, politicians have an obligation to recognize each other, to dialogue with each other, to visit each other, without preconditions of the sort that lead some politicians in Spain to say that they would not set foot in Gibraltar. That was the success, and it was as much his success as it was the GSD government's success. So I will recommend to this party and to its leadership that it should never, ever abandon the same approach to relations with Spain and the same approach to foreign policy as this party has known before. And I have a feeling that it's good advice, because goodness gracious me, the GSLP government sounds more like the GSD in foreign policy every day that they are in office. And so, with the greatest peace of mind that I am leaving the party and Gibraltar in the safest possible pair of hands, in the knowledge that he is well equipped to give back to the people of Gibraltar that which I think the majority of them have already regretted not having done in December 2011, a new returned to office GSD government, I now have the greatest personal honor, not just for all the reasons that I have said to you, but because few people have shown in public life in Gibraltar the commitment and the courage in public life that Danny has shown. He has paid for his willingness to serve the people of Gibraltar with his life minus a few seconds. That is what saved his life. Many people, I dare say including me, might have said, I've often asked myself the question, if the same had happened to me, would I have stuck it out and carried on? I can't say that I would have. But this party now has a leader that, notwithstanding that, is here to carry on where many, many other men and women would have thrown in the towel, and with good and understandable and justifiable reason. So let no one doubt his courage, let no one doubt his commitment, and let no one doubt his readiness. I now, therefore, have the wonderful privilege of introducing to you my very, very, very worthy successor, the new leader of the GSD, under whom I am delighted to continue to serve until 2015 in Parliament and thereafter in whatever way the party wants me to, Daniel Feetham.
Thank you. Thank you, please. Thank you. Freddie, Peter, thank you. Colleagues, party members, members of the public that have just simply come to hear what we have to say tonight, welcome to this jam-packed INSA's Hall Theatre. The last time that I was asked up on stage, in fact, I was collared up on stage, I was asked to imitate Tom Jones. I can assure you, and you can safely stay seated, that there's not going to be any sex bomb rendition from me today. I can see that there are some disappointed faces. So Selwyn here has actually volunteered to do a Christmas special. Now, Selwyn, that's called making it up as we go along. It's what our political opponents do every single day of the week. It was with great humility, but also enthusiasm and determination that I sought from my executive colleagues, and indeed from my parliamentary colleagues, their endorsement as the leader of the GSD and the leader of the opposition. I am honored to have received that endorsement from them, but above all, I am utterly and totally committed to serving the people of Gibraltar in the years to come. And it's in that spirit that I want to talk to you today about my political beliefs and the values that will guide me as the leader of the GSD during those years. Like many of you here, I come from a family of hard-working people. My mother held 2 jobs throughout my teens. She was a cleaner during the day, and she was also working in a casino at nighttime. It taught me the value of hard work. It taught me the value of respect for others. It taught me to believe in a community that values hard work, that rewards hard work and merit, not political allegiances, as we have so unfortunately and frequently seen to be the case since December of 2011. Where people can aspire through that hard work to be the leaders of tomorrow in their own fields of work. Where people that day in, day out lead hard, honest, working lives can aspire to improve their lives and can aspire to improve the lives of their family. And where governments create the environment for those people through that hard work to be able to prosper and also to be able to flourish, where we recognize that it's fundamentally wrong for a government and a government department to refuse to disclose job vacancies to those already in employment because they're only disclosable to the unemployed because they wish to artificially reduce unemployment in Gibraltar, where we recognize it's wrong for the government to park 450 trainees in a sterile future job strategy scheme that is so artificial that it has the government itself scrambling to incorporate companies run by their own supporters to park those individuals in those companies. I believe in Gibraltarians working up and down Gibraltar, in the private sector, in our care services, in our social services, in our classrooms, in our hospitals. I believe in people that wake up every single morning to go on a school run, to take their children to school, to then go to work, to pay their mortgages, to pay their rent, to contribute to their children's education. People that love this community, people that contribute to it, irrespective of their political allegiances. That's what I believe in. And I believe in a party, the GSD, that is a government in waiting because it is prepared to test its policies as we will be prepared to test our policies according to the values that I'm going to be speaking to you today. That is a government in waiting because it is prepared to face down the a mí me pertenece culture that is gradually creeping into our society, fueled by undeliverable promises made at election time. Because it's very easy, as the GSLP Liberals have done, to be all things to all men, promise everything to everybody, to create unreasonable and undeliverable expectations that spiral into unreasonable demands that are not in the best long, medium, or short-term interests of this community. Because I believe that in the same way as the collective owes a duty to the individual, so too does the individual owe a duty to the collective and to this community. That we must have a social conscience, but that social conscience has to be balanced with civic pride. It has to be balanced with individual and political responsibility. Because whilst we always have to have a principal and primary obligation to create the economic and social safety nets, as we did over 16 years, for those that need it the most, whilst we must always strive to create a fairer society, a fair society based on a fair distribution of the wealth generated by this community through tax cuts, investments in our public services, and in the fabric of Gibraltar. The needy do not include those who abuse the system. The needy do not include those who want something for nothing. And leadership must also include the ability not only to say yes, but more importantly to say no when the demands are not justified. I believe that it isn't about left or right. It isn't about socialism or any kind of other kind of ism. It's about a GSD firmly anchored in its values. It's about a GSD that instinctively understands that there is a right way and a wrong way of doing things. A GSD that places a premium on good governance, on openness, transparency, on good economic management. A GSD that is willing to engage members of the public and its own members at every single level. A GSD that listens not only to its members, but also, as important and sometimes more important, to those that don't support it. A GSD that is broadly based, supported by people with different social and economic backgrounds, trade unionists, businessmen, Jews, Christians, Muslims, a party that had roots in this community, whose values resonate with this community. Those are the values that will guide me as leader of the GSD, and God willing, those are the values that will guide me as Chief Minister of this community one day. The values that have allowed this party, whilst in government, to massively improve the standard of living of Gibraltarians across the board, to increase the economy by the size of the economy by 300%, to produce over £200 million in government surpluses, over 8,000 new jobs in the labour market, over £650 million invested in the fabric of Gibraltar, not only the Gibraltar of today, but the Gibraltar of tomorrow, the Gibraltar of our children and our children's children. A golden legacy that Mr. Picardo promised whilst he was in the John Mackintosh Hall at election time not to denigrate, and which he does completely the opposite every single day, often every day of the week, with every press release issued from number 6 Convent Place. A legacy that he knows that if he continues to look backwards and not forwards, it will take him another 30 years, God forbid that he'll be there so long, 30 years to achieve but a fraction of what we achieved in 16. I believe in British sovereignty over Gibraltar. I believe that the sovereignty of this community, that the land in which our fathers, our mothers, our brothers and sisters are buried, and the waters around it are not negotiable and not negotiable at any price. But that you can have red lines in the sand that you will never cross because they are fundamental to this community, but that you can conduct your foreign affairs and engage with Spain and the United Kingdom in a calm, mature, sensible, intelligent way to the benefit of this community. That we can conduct our foreign policy, and that we must conduct our foreign policy in a way that does not interfere with the continued prosperity and the continued stability of this community. That we must do so in a way where people can go and sleep at night knowing that they are safe and secure. That is our way. That is the GSD way. A way that does not include the Minister for the Environment making announcements on Facebook, doing away with the 1999 agreement with dire potential consequences for this community. It does not include the Chief Minister of Gibraltar trying to justify the doing away of the 1999 agreement on rule of law grounds, when everybody can see that the rule of law unfortunately no longer prevails over British Gibraltar territorial waters because there is more illegal fishing today than ever before. Because anyone that is reasonable enough to think about this particular issue is bound to come to the conclusion that we did away with the 1999 agreement for absolutely nothing. Now, Mr. Picardo says that I am angry. No, I'm not angry. Concerned? Yes, I am concerned. I am concerned that this is a government that came to power promising a new dawn, and that increasingly people can see that when you strip away all the spin, the smiles and the nice photographs, they offer the people of Gibraltar a false dawn. Concerned that we are seeing what Peter described in his budget speech last year as the big lie begin to unravel. The big lie, where we told them at election time that they could reduce gross public debt by half by simply transferring government debentures into the Gibraltar Savings Bank, which is precisely what they've been doing over the last year, solely so that Dr. Garcia can experience the placebo effect of ticking just another worthless box in the list of manifesto commitments that he says that they have complied with. The big lie, where Mr. Picardo at the last election said that public finances were in a ruinous state, whilst at the same time making promises to everybody on anything. Where in his first TV interview, Putting on his most solemn face, he spoke about an impenetrable curtain, serious public finance issues, and an 100 million black hole. And what does he do? A month later, he appears on public television again, saying that he's going to spend £80 million on new floors in 3 estates without consulting the tenants, a manifesto, a commitment that wasn't even in their manifesto commitment or in their manifesto, and which they have since had to abandon because of complaints from tenants. Millions on a Commonwealth Parade car park, which, if truth be told, is more of a luxury than a necessity. Thousands on the Thinking Green conference, over £12 million in the future job strategy every single year, £10 million in an expansion of the public service. The reality is that these arguments on public finance and on public debt were some of the most dishonest arguments you are ever likely to hear at an election, and we are going to ensure they pay a heavy political price for it. And what we will not allow is for those arguments to now become a mantra and an excuse for them not to comply with those same manifesto commitments. Because make no mistake, never in the history of politics has so much been promised to so many. 50% economic growth in the next 4 years. Over 600 million in 4 years in capital projects. Freezing rates, rents, electricity, cutting income tax to 15%, and all delivered in the context of a manifesto commitment that said that they would not borrow in order to pay for it all, and that they would donate every single penny of government surpluses to community care. Well, if you are not going to borrow to pay for your projects, and you are going to donate every single penny of government excess income to community care, how on earth did they expect to pay for it all? And there are those that get offended or got offended when, during my first interview as leader of the GSD, I described all this as being an electoral fraud. Well, let me rephrase it. The political charge is that they made promises at election time to the people of Gibraltar, intending for the people of Gibraltar to rely on those promises, knowing that they could not possibly meet those promises. If that is not deceit, if that is not a falsehood, I do not know what is. Yes, I am concerned that this is a government that, despite its openness and transparency agenda, has a chief minister that leans on the unions of Gibraltar in order to make them withdraw a written invitation to me to stand shoulder to shoulder with him on a platform on May Day. Yes, I am concerned. Concerned that despite the fact that a number of weeks ago he gave an interview to the Gibraltar Chronicle saying that he wished to brief me on Privy Council terms on issues of vital importance to Gibraltar, I still await his call, and I am absolutely certain that the Mayor of La Linea is more properly briefed on certain aspects of the fishing dispute than the leader of Her Majesty's loyal opposition of Gibraltar. That this is a chief minister, when he was leader of the opposition, decried the use of the gas-guzzling Jaguar. Well, I don't know whether it's gas-guzzling or it isn't gas-guzzling, but he's certainly getting his money's worth from it. Concerned that this is a government that seems to make it up as it goes along, that appears not to have a strategic plan for the next 3 years, and that if it does have a strategic plan, it belongs to the Minister of Employment, not the Chief Minister of Gibraltar. Concerned that the government continues to plough ahead with its plans for the Gibraltar Savings Bank despite industry concerns and despite the potential effect on other banks within this jurisdiction. Concerned that this is a government which, again, despite its openness, transparency and accountability agenda, constantly and consistently closes the shutters on the opposition of Gibraltar every single time that we come close to exposing their rhetoric by refusing to answer pertinent questions. Questions such as who paid for the Obama photograph and what arrangements does the government of Gibraltar have with those individuals so that you and us can scrutinize whether that photograph comes at a wider price for this community. Where it refuses to disclose how much has been paid by way of consultancy fees to Glyn Ford, a former MEP, but a member of the GSLP and a man that campaigned for the GSLP at the last election. And refuses to disclose the number and identity of companies that have and enjoy contracts by direct allocation and subsidized labor from the Future Jobs Strategy. And if that is an accountability or a transparency agenda, I'm afraid that Mr. Picardo is going to fail the people of Gibraltar sooner than I thought that he was going to do so. And I am concerned that this is a government that defends the spectacular promotion of its own supporters within the bus company on the basis that it just simply followed the recommendation of a selection board, when it refuses to follow the recommendations of a virtually identically constituted selection board in relation to 4 information officers in the tourist board simply because Mr. Bossano wants to control who does and doesn't work in Gibraltar. Concerned, as should Mr. Picardo be concerned, that this is a government that instructs its lawyers to drop the defense of one of its biggest, drop the defense in an unfair dismissal case brought by one of its biggest supporters, a supporter that was represented by Mr. Picardo and Mr. Bossano professionally before they became government ministers, and that supporter has been convicted of fraud for falsely providing documents in that very same unfair dismissal case. Yes, I am concerned. But despite all these concerns that we have vocalized, that we have brought into the public domain, because it's our duty as an opposition to do so, the duty of an opposition collectively and the duty of the opposition individually, all 7 of us, to bring the government to account, to hold the government to account. Despite all that, there is room in Gibraltar politics for the government and for the opposition to work together. A number of weeks ago, I brought a motion to Parliament calling on the Chief Minister and myself to work together in relation to David Cameron's plans to try and negotiate UK membership within the EU. That was passed by Parliament with amendments, and I still await Mr. Picardo's call to see whether he is willing to act in accordance with that motion. He also gave an interview to the Gibraltar Chronicle, saying that he was prepared to brief me on issues of vital importance to Gibraltar on Privy Council terms. Again, I await his call, but I can say here and now that I accept his terms. Whenever he consults me or wherever he imparts information to me on Privy Council terms, he can take it as read that it will be sacrosanct, that I will not reveal anything that he tells me in confidence, that every advice that I give him, every opinion that I express will be an opinion that I will express in the best interest of this community and Gibraltar, not in the narrow interests of my party. But Mr. Picardo needs to be able to to walk the walk and not simply talk the talk, as I said in one of my earlier speeches in 2011. He has to realize that for a good and constructive relationship between the government and opposition, that he needs to extend the hand of friendship, which I will willingly take as leader of the opposition, and I am willing to work with him for the benefit of Gibraltar. And all that remains for me tonight is to thank you all for the support that you've shown tonight in coming in the numbers that you've come. Our logo for the future is Forward Together. And with your help, I know that we have an excellent chance of being returned to office in 3 years' time and to give the people of this community the government that it deserves. Thank you very much. Y pa'lante.
Closing the conference, activists and members of the GSD executive and Young GSD were thanked and called up on stage to join the rest of the party. GBC has invited the GSLP, the Liberal Party, the GSD and the PDP to allow our cameras at their conferences by way of better informing the public of their policies. GBC will produce a programme from one conference per year for each of the political parties.